Okay, welcome back to the video. This is my Jupiter video where I'm going to ultimately end up at Europa. Hopefully I won't have any problems getting down there, and the goal is to land at a base that I have downloaded for Europa. So let me go ahead and unpause the simulation. I'm recording this video immediately after the other one, so there's no multiple day delay, so I remember quite well where I left off, obviously. So there isn't much to do maintenance-wise or figuring anything out. What I need to do here is pretty straightforward. I need to set up a transx maneuver to help me figure out the best time to rendezvous with Europa. So let's bring up transx on this side. And let me see here. Got a planet, a target planet's moons. That's what we need. So we need to select the moon that we want. It's going to be Europa. So now we'll go forward on this side and just view the encounter. And then we'll set up the transx maneuver down here. And make sure I've got maneuver set. Maneuver mode on. And now we'll go through the variables. So to get down to Europa, this is obviously going to be the case where we're going to have to slow ourselves down a little bit. So let's apply some negative prograde. And right about there gets us in about the orbit of Europa. It looks like we could actually use a little more. You know what, I'm actually going to set this up over here because I think it'll be easier to see. Yeah, and I'll view the encounter down here. Make this nice and large. Yeah, much easier to see. Okay, so you can see here we've got the dashed yellow line, which is going to be our hypothetical. It's coming down here and intersecting the orbital ring of Europa. So that's a good starting point. Now I'm going to work with the date to find out when in time I need to do this burn. So this is right now. And we'll just go ultra. That's not going to be fast enough. Let's go super. Looks like super is what we want. And we can just see when these two lines converge. That's when we should be at our closest point. And something like that. Now, I can see the orbit's a bit high. So we're going to come back over to prograde and bring it down a bit more, as much as is necessary. And I'm not in a rush to get to Europa, so rather than applying a bunch of negative prograde and rendezvousing over here, I'd rather rendezvous basically 180 of the 180 degrees opposite. So preferably like right here. That would be your classic Hammond transfer. Hammond, whatever that word is. So we're going to bump the date out a little bit more. And yeah, right about that. If we can rendezvous right here, that should have minimum amount of fuel usage. Got view maneuver, we want view encounter. That's better. Now, Europa, I haven't the slightest idea what kind of atmosphere Europa has, if any. But I can imagine that it's relatively small body, so we're going to get in really close. Let's go in the wrong way. Let's go positive. I should have done a little bit of homework on Europa before I started setting this up. And you can see here that our minimum altitude is constantly changing, and that could pose some interesting problems. Basically, again, the whole gravity thing, the multi-body issue, the math. Alright, so this says we're going to have an inclination at Europa of 164. That's basically a retrograde orbit. I don't much care which way we orbit Europa. I don't know if it's if the moon rotates normal, you know, like the rest of the planets, or if it's retrograde like Venus. I doubt it's retrograde, but I don't know. We can put in a little bit of plane change just to see if we can change the inclination. Won't matter that much, but at the very least we can maybe get in plane here, like so. It's actually, see if I can go that way with it. Yeah, that's better. Now we will work with our prograde a little bit more here. Down to the, yeah, that's fine. So what we can do here, if I add in a little bit of prograde, which is basically taking away some of the prograde I've already added, which is a good thing, it uses less fuel. You'll see that line will go all the way around, turn around, come out the other way, and that will give us an inclination closer to 0. Like that. So that's more of an coming out of the west, heading toward the east, whereas the other one was coming out of the west, or rather coming out of the east, heading toward the west, retrograde. I'm going to aim very low, because I can see that number is constantly going up. I don't know how much that's going to change between now and the time I actually do the burn. So I can do any more adjustment here. It's going the wrong way. Okay, well, I like the way this looks, but again, it may change substantially before we get over to here where we're going to do the burn, but we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Now, according to Transx, this maneuver is going to cost us 1,705 delta V. I know I've got enough for that, but let's see. Just see if I can learn a little bit more about fuel here. So if I put in DV 1705 and hit enter, now burn time calculator, yeah, if I understand this, it says that after that burn is done, my vehicle mass will be 593.781, which is quite a bit higher than the empty vessel. So I've definitely got enough fuel to do the maneuver, which I already know I do, just based on what I can see here, but it's nice to be able to learn how to confirm that with the tool, with the calculator. But that's just to do this maneuver. That's not to actually get in orbit around Europa and land. So I believe I need this number, plus, if I'm understanding this, once I get to this point, I'm going to need an additional 847 to get captured. That's not to get in a nice low orbit, that's just to get captured. So I would have to, at the very least, add 850 to this number. And let's see what that gives us, just out of curiosity. And hopefully I'm not boring you with this, but I find this extra stuff interesting, and I would like to be able to plan these types of missions with more precision. So we're saying we're going to need 1705 to do this maneuver, and then at least another 850 to get captured. And then of course we'll need more fuel beyond that to get into a nice low orbit and then eventually land at the base. So let's put that number in here, 2555. And according to burn time calculator, our vehicle will still have a mass much higher than it would be if it's empty, so we've definitely got enough fuel to do this maneuver and get captured. Good to know. So let's press forward and get closer to the time to do this burn. Now I can tell just by seeing how quickly these numbers are going by that in a matter of 119,000 seconds this is all going to be quite a bit different. So we're definitely going to have to refine this before we do the burn. But at the very least, setting it up, it gives you a ballpark, and as you get closer you just can refine it, and it doesn't cost us anything to set this up, so getting it figured out is just the first step. And it's actually not drifting nearly as bad as I thought it would. And the beauty about doing this maneuver the way I'm doing it, if for some stupid reason I overshot Jupiter, or rather Europa, since I'm already in orbit around Europa, I could just go around. Not that I would really want to do that, that'd be sloppy, but it would be, one of the advantages. Or maybe even it could be the case that you could get in orbit around Jupiter, and it could be that you might have a better chance to rendezvous with the moon, Europa, after a dozen orbits. It might be more fuel efficient if you waited for a dozen orbits and then rendezvoused. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to rendezvous right away. And we're 1,400 seconds away from the time. So let's work on this a little bit. We're not as precise as we would like to be. Okay, let's start by just swinging that plane a little bit. It's not going to take much. Like that. And now prograde to bring that minimum altitude way down. And that's going the wrong way. Oh boy, I sure wish I had thought to check Europa's atmosphere. Pretty sure it's just a ball of ice or rock or something. I don't think it has an atmosphere. We'll go for like 20 kilometers. Okay. Shrink that down a bit. And warping time ahead here. Okay, getting in really close. Let's
rotation.
Figure out how to rotate. Okay, just 80 seconds away. In 5 seconds. 2, 1, and burning. And we can go ahead and bump the clock, or bump the time forward here a little bit. Getting close to the end of the burn. Slow things down a little. Slow things down a little more. A little more. We'll go with that.
Translation.
Very good. Let's go maneuver. Huh. Somehow our final minimum altitude ended up being 621. That's quite imprecise. Not sure how that happened. So I'm going to actually do another maneuver right away, but let me go ahead and dump these extra modules, the ones that were just used.
Payload deployed. Payload deployed. Payload deployed.
Okay.
Information. APU running.
Wow, I guess the XR5 doesn't exactly carry a ton of extra fuel like I thought it did. Because I'm already down to just, that one's, well, that's LOX. 1, 2, 3, 4. Only got 4 fuel modules left. Wow. 55 days of locks, excuse me. Almost wondering, to do this successfully with Saturn, because you have to bring more locks, quite a bit more, which means you can't carry, you're going to be missing at least 2 or 3 fuel modules. Wow. At any rate, let's go ahead now and set up one more maneuver real quick just to fix that, because for whatever reason, I guess the burn that I did wasn't quite precise enough, which I don't get because it was 0.000, so I don't know. Anyway, maneuver mode on. And we're going to say that we'll do this burn in just a few seconds here, but let's bump that out. That's good enough. Yeah, in fact, I don't even need to do a maneuver. Let me just do it this way. Let's go maneuver mode off. Set that aside. Just go retrograde. And all I really need to do here is just bump the translation thrusters, and that's going to bring that down. Okay, looks like it's continuing to count down. I'm going to go ahead and leave this here and leave it large so we can see really well. This is where we are at right now. This is where Europa is at right now. We're going to orbit around to here, and in the amount of time it takes us to go from here to here, Europa will have gone around to that point as well. So we're going to rendezvous over here. Now, let me just think about the rendezvous. I guess what I'll do, several ways I can do it. I guess I will do a transx maneuver. I'll set it up when I get roughly like out to here, or I could just use burn time calculator. Yeah, let's warp time ahead and figure it out later. Okay, so here we are. Now we're going to meet up over there. Let me bring up orbit. Let me reference Europa at this point. Copy that information over to the HUD.
Rotation.
And I would like to go prograde to Europa. Get an idea if I can see where it's at yet. There it is. Okay, we are 40,000 seconds away from periapsis at Europa. I'm going to tap the translation thrusters a little bit to see if I can bring that minimum altitude down just with translation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get in a little bit closer, and then I'm going to think about setting up that transx maneuver. It's odd that the time to the periapsis is actually going up. That's weird. So somehow I'm getting pulled away from Europa at the moment. Or Europa's getting pulled away from me, but I assume that it'll change here in a moment and go the other. Yeah, there it goes. Just one of them strange things when you're dealing with such large gravity wells and so many moons. Okay, and get rotated back over to Europa. Just want to be able to keep my eye on it. Now we're 30,000 seconds away from periapsis at Europa. Let's speed this up a little bit. Okay, that's got us pretty close. Let me go prograde to Europa. I'm going to have to do it manually.
Translation.
Now I'm just going to tap the translation a little bit to make sure that my orbital altitude around Europa is a positive number. Right now it has me impacting the surface. Okay. Now, let us also start thinking about the base alignment, which I think I probably should have thought about sooner, but it just dawned on me. So we're going to reference Europa on the map, and we're going to target Europa base, which is just some base I downloaded off Orbit Hangar. And fortunately, the base is basically on the equator, so we're pretty good. Shows our off-plane distance to the base is only 48 kilometers.
Rotation.
I'm going to rotate so that I'm heads up according to Europa. I don't like being upside down, or I don't like feeling like I'm upside down.
Translation.
And I'm just going to tap translation a little bit to see if I can work with that off-plane distance. Because it's relatively low, I don't feel the need to set up a maneuver just to do that. And it's counting up. So I set it to -1 kilometer because this way it's getting closer to 0. Alright, now let's go ahead. I suppose we're close enough we can think about setting up that transx maneuver. So the first thing we have to do is the date. We're going to reach Europa's periapsis here. Where's it at? Here. 57195.2415. 57195 dot. So that's what we want to adjust. 2415. There we go. And the type of maneuver is going to be negative prograde. And I confused myself. Let me reset this. Maybe I'm using the wrong... Maybe I should use this encounter date instead. Just bear with me for a moment, I'm a little confused about this maneuver. I mean, it's negative prograde, I mean, that's a given. I don't understand why these numbers, or why these graphics are flipping around all over the place. That usually happens when you set the date incorrectly. Like if you are trying to rendezvous with the ISS, for example, and you accidentally set the date for right now, you can't do that. You need to do the maneuver in the future, but that's not the case here. Weird. I don't know. I'm just going to turn maneuver mode off and plan on doing this with burn time calculator instead. Because I do not understand what's happening.
Rotation.
Okay, actually, there's a couple ways we could do this. Could use burn time calculator or attitude MFD. Alright, let me do it this way. Let me bring up attitude MFD. And let me target Europa. That'll give me this information, which is good.
Translation. Rotation.
So I need to know how long it's going to take me to eliminate 1,000, that number. So there's burn time. Let's do manual. That's right. DV is going to be 1940. Okay, so we need 125 kilometers to get rid of that much delta V using the full power of the main engines. If we want to use the retro instead, engine type not available. Weird. I wonder why. Okay, so never mind. We're now 36,000 kilometers from Europa. I think I said that right. And according to burn time calculator, if we do this burn, the vehicle will weigh this much after the burn is over, which is a lot more than what it will weigh if it's empty, so we definitely have enough fuel to do that burn. Does it only tell me the engine isn't available because the retro door is not open?
APU offline.
Yeah, okay. So if I want to use the retro instead, and there's no reason other than the fact that I'm far enough out that I could do it, and that I can see, then it would be a 500, it would need to start it when I was at, let's say, 600 kilometers instead. Okay, let's do it this way because that stuff with Transx was confusing me there. Sometimes Transx just gets in this mode where I can't understand what it's doing. It almost seems like it's throwing up a bunch of errors. Not in this case, but like when I was going to Saturn, it prints all this information that just doesn't even look valid. So I don't know. I just still have more to learn, I guess, but I assume there's nothing wrong with the MFD. It's just me not knowing what's going on. At any rate, let's go ahead now and warp time ahead. And before I do that, let me Control S to save right here where I'm at, because I'm starting now to get a little iffy with what's going on. Okay, so I've saved. Now let's warp time in. Okay, so we're still at 12,000 kilometers. By the way, I downloaded a better texture pack for Europa, so this should look better than the default. If I remember to, I'll put a link to the description. Put a link in the description for that texture pack. It's on Orbit Hangar. You can find it just by looking for Europa. I think I actually changed my mind. I think I would rather do this with the main engines. Well, it'll be fine doing it this way. But let me see for sure when I need to start. Let me check my speeds again. That's a lot more than it was. I need to definitely reset this. Okay. Really good thing I checked that. I mean, I knew it was going to go up, but I didn't expect it to go up by that much. Okay, so the new relative velocity I'm going to put in that number, 2400. So now we need to start our burn when we're 900 kilometers. Let's call it 950. Yeah, maybe not quite 950. Yeah, 950 sounds good. And let's also use this information. Let me also take one last look at yeah, never mind. Okay, let's see if we sped up. Yeah, we did. 2520. So we're going to be starting this burn very shortly. Oops. I was a little late there. Okay, now I'm going to bring up Orbit MFD to keep an eye on how this burn's coming along. Once I get the burn complete here and we are established in orbit around Europa, I'm going to call this a part and end it, and then pick up on the next part, because this is getting pretty long. Okay, the periapsis is going negative, so I'm going to do a bit of a rotation here. Hang on, let me think about which way I need to rotate. Because I'm burning retro. Okay, there we go. Now the periapsis is coming up. And take a look at the external. Actually, I'll go ahead and leave orbit MFD visible. Go ahead and warp time in a little bit. There, we just burnt through a fuel module. I need to rotate again. At the very least, I need the periapsis to be, 0. But I think what I might actually want to do is get in orbit around Europa landing right away would have its benefits. It'd be elegant, but I think in order to, if I want to hit the base, I don't know that the base is necessarily right here. It probably is not, so I probably need to get an orbit. Just warping time in at a factor of 10. Need to rotate in a bit more. And we'll be captured here shortly. There we are, we're captured. Another fuel module gone. And actually what I might do at this point, I'm going to kill the engines, because we're still 1,000 seconds away from periapsis. So now I'm going to go retrograde now that we're here at Europa. It's the strongest gravitational body, so I can use these autopilots. And now we'll just do a normal orbit insert. So we use the retro engines there to do our braking, to slow us down enough to get captured. Actually, I'm going to have to do a little bit of a burn here, because obviously I can't burn at periapsis if the periapsis is negative. So let me think here for a moment. Coming around this way. If I go to minus 90, that'll bring up the periapsis.
Translation.
Quick test with translation. I am right, so a little bit of main engine. You can see that periapsis coming up. And we'll make it, let's just go for something reasonable, like 15 kilometers. That looks good. Now back to retrograde. Before we do anything else, let's get rid of some spent fuel tanks. Lighten the vessel a little more. The lighter it is, the less expensive it is to do subsequent burns. Okay, that's LOX. Okay, that's empty.
Payload deployed.
That's empty.
Payload deployed.
And there we go. Warp time ahead a little bit. Let them float away. Good enough. Close the doors.
APU offline.
Alright, now let's warp time ahead to periapsis, and let's just let burn time calculator do the job for us. Make sure we switch back to the main engine. Actually, let me reset first now. Periapsis and circularize. Let's go retrograde. And we're going to do the burn in a little less than a minute. And this burn's going to cost us not much, about 400. And burning. Very nice. I almost feel like I know what I'm doing now. Third time is definitely the charm. Okay. Alright, so we are now in orbit around Europa, and we've obviously got more than enough fuel to do everything that we need to do at this point. Let's take a quick look at map. There's the base. Let's look at base sync. And what I need to do is target Europa base, I believe is how it's, yeah. And we want direct. And we're only 5 kilometers off, so just a minimal amount of translation will get us right in line with the base, and then we'll be all set. I'm going to wrap it up at this point for this video. It's gone on quite a while, so I'm definitely going to make a new part. Like I've said in all the previous videos, if you have any questions about about this part of the video, leave those questions down below. Comments down below. Advice, if you saw anything that I did that didn't make sense or anything that I could have done better, leave it down below. And if you liked the video, let me know. If you hated the video, let me know. And I'll see you in the next part. Okay, welcome back to the video. This is my Jupiter video where I'm going to ultimately end up at Europa. Hopefully I won't have any problems getting down there, and the goal is to land at a base that I have downloaded for Europa. So let me go ahead and unpause the simulation. I'm recording this video immediately after the other one, so there's no multiple day delay, so I remember quite well where I left off, obviously. So there isn't much to do maintenance wise or figuring anything out. What I need to do here is pretty straightforward. I need to set up a transx maneuver to help me figure out the best time to rendezvous with Europa. So let's bring up transx on this side. And let me see here. Got a planet, a target, planets, moons. That's what we need. So we need to select the moon that we want. It's going to be Europa. So now we'll go forward on this side and just view the encounter. And then we'll set up the transx maneuver down here. And make sure I've got maneuver set. Maneuver mode on. And now we'll go through the variables. So to get down to Europa, this is obviously going to be the case where we're going to have to slow ourselves down a little bit. So let's apply some negative prograde. And right about there gets us in about the orbit of Europa. It looks like we could actually use a little more. You know what, I'm actually going to set this up over here because I think it'll be easier to see. Yeah, and I'll view the encounter down here. Make this nice and large. Oh yeah, much easier to see. Rendezvousing over here, I'd rather rendezvous basically 180 of the 180 degrees opposite. So preferably like right here, that would be your classic Hamann transfer. Hamann, whatever that word is. So we're going to bump the date out a little bit more. And yeah, right about that. If we can rendezvous right here, that should have minimum amount of fuel usage. Got view maneuver, we want view encounter. That's better. Now, Europa, I haven't the slightest idea what kind of atmosphere Europa has, if any. But I can imagine that it's relatively small body, so we're going to get in really close. Let's go in the wrong way. Let's go positive. I should have done a little bit of homework on Europa before I started setting this up. And you can see here that our minimum altitude is constantly changing, and that could pose some interesting problems. Basically, again, the whole gravity thing, the multi-body issue, the math. Alright, so this says we're going to have an inclination at Europa of 164. That's basically a retrograde orbit. I don't much care which way we orbit Europa. I don't know if it's if the moon rotates normal, like the rest of the planets, or if it's retrograde like Venus. I doubt it's retrograde, but I don't know. We can put in a little bit of plane change just to see if we can change the inclination. Won't matter that much, but at the very least we can maybe get in plane here, like so. It's actually, see if I can go that way with it. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so you can see here we've got the dashed yellow line, which is going to be our hypothetical. It's coming down here and intersecting the orbital ring of Europa. So that's a good starting point. Now I'm going to work with the date to find out when in time I need to do this burn. So this is right now. And we'll just go ultra. That's not going to be fast enough. Let's go super. Looks like super is what we want. And we can just see when these two lines converge. That's when we should be at our closest point. And something like that. Now, I can see the orbit's a bit high. So we're going to come back over to prograde and bring it down a bit more, as much as is necessary. And I'm not in a rush to get to Europa, so rather than applying a bunch of negative prograde and